Welcome everybody, it's good to see you all. We have people today from all over the US, some folks from Canada. We have Doris from Switzerland joining us from our Swiss team. It's 10 o'clock at night over there, so if she looks a little tired, that's why. And we have Dee from our Swiss office, our media office here, and Catherine as well from our media office. Let's get going. I'm going to begin sharing my screen now. So we'll do that. And just get everything set here. Good. Okay, so what we're going to ask you to do is, if you haven't muted yourself, please mute. That'll help with noise and feedback and all that kind of stuff. My presentation will last about a half an hour, and after that we'll have time for questions and answers. Because we're going to be a big group today, I think it'll be best to use the chat for the questions rather than unmuting yourselves, if you don't mind. So you can put your questions in anytime during my presentation. I won't answer them right away. We'll save all those questions for the end. But feel free to, if something occurs to you, just throw a question in, and we've got some real expertise here today, so I'm sure we'll be able to come up with some kind of answer for you. So let me get going here. So what we're going to do today is we're going to try to answer 3 key questions about the Swiss Untour. Why Switzerland? Why Untours? And where should we stay? That last one is one that we hear a lot when people are thinking about taking a Swiss Untour. So we'll try to address all 3 of those. So we'll start by just kind of zooming out to look at where Switzerland is. This is kind of 101 stuff, but just for those of you who are a little less familiar with the geography, Switzerland's right in the middle of Europe. We've got France, Germany, Austria, and Italy surrounding the country. Those are the 3 languages that also dominate in Switzerland: French, German, and Italian. So you have French spoken in the western part of Switzerland, German in the north and the east, and Italian in the south. We are in the center of Switzerland, which happens to be German speaking. So that's where we are located. So let's take a look at one of the reasons that people really like Switzerland is the variety that you'll see there. You've already seen that there's a variety of languages. There's also a variety of landscapes in Switzerland. This is a valley. This is agriculture happening in a valley in Switzerland. You'll see that kind of landscape. You'll also see landscapes with rivers and waterfalls. This is the Rhine River in the north of Switzerland, going over a waterfall near Schaffhausen. So you'll see this kind of landscape as well. And finally, of course, you've got the Alps. Right in the center of the country where we are, we have some beautiful mountain scenery. This happens to be a view from the Hasliberg mountainside. So lots of variety in terms of landscape. You also have transportation variety. One of the fun things about traveling around Switzerland is that you can travel on all kinds of transportation. This is a train in the eastern part of Switzerland. You'll see the windows on this particular train have this sort of panoramic bend so that you can look up at the mountains as you go by. A lot of the scenic trains will have that feature, but not just regular trains. You'll see some interesting looking mountain trains in Switzerland. You'll see funiculars like this that will go up a straight track up a mountainside, and you might get out at the top and take a look at the views, do some hiking, all sorts of possibilities there. You'll have some other kinds of transportation, like a steam train on some mountains. This one happens to use cog technology. You'll see this cog in the middle of the tracks. That will help get the train up to the top of the mountain. You'll also see buses that go up into the little villages that aren't served by trains. And so it provides yet another form of transportation. And finally, you'll have boats. This is a boat on Lake Lucerne that's a converted steamship, as a lot of them are. And one of the ways you can spend a day in Switzerland is just to cruise around Lake Lucerne. You can get off at the different stops, catch the next boat, or you can just stay on the boat and enjoy the scenery. When you get off at the villages, you can do some walking, you can do some shopping. There's just lots to do just on a lake. That can be a day trip in and of itself, or an afternoon if you prefer. So that's another great way to enjoy the variety of Switzerland. Hiking is another thing that our folks really enjoy doing. Switzerland has great variety in hiking. You've got hard trails, easy trails, all of them are beautiful, but there's really something for every level of difficulty. You'll see some amazing scenery. This little lake is up above our village of Kandersteg in the Swiss Oberland. It's called the Eschinensee. And you'll never get lost in Switzerland, or very rarely get lost on a hiking trail, because you've got these signs everywhere you go that'll tell you where you're going, and even the typical number of hours and minutes that it might take you to get to that destination. So lots of good signage, well-marked trails, all levels of difficulty. It's a hiking paradise, really. Now, what do you do when you finish a hike? You're going to want some food. Swiss food tends to be of the hearty variety, if you will. A little heavy on the cheese in many cases, but these days you're also able to find a lot of good vegetarian and even vegan options if you have any dietary restrictions. But if you like cheese, Switzerland is, again, a wonderful place to be. Everything from the hard cheeses to the soft cheeses and everything in the middle. You'll find some real good stinky cheeses as well. So good food options. If you like chocolate, you're in the right country. Everything from white chocolate to dark chocolate to milk chocolate to, what's this, rum chocolate, all sorts of great options on the chocolate side. This happens to be one of my vices, so I do indulge quite a bit in the chocolate when I am in Switzerland. Another thing that people really enjoy in Switzerland, I particularly enjoy going to Swiss festivals. The traditions are very much alive in Switzerland. This happens to be a festival that is up on the Hasliberg of central Switzerland, pretty close to where we are. And this is a yodeling group singing for an audience of a mix of mostly Swiss, but a few tourists have made it to this festival as well. And you'll also see things like flag waving and Alphorn blowing at these festivals. And of course, there's going to be plenty of food, mostly cheese, mostly beer. You might get a glass of wine if you're lucky, but most of the festivals are going to be heavy on the cheesy dishes and the beer. But lots of fun at these outdoor festivals in Switzerland. There are also cities in Switzerland. We're going to focus real quickly on 4 cities in the German part of Switzerland. This is Basel, up on the Rhine River, on the border with Germany and France. And this happens to be the Basel Cathedral. This is just one part of the old city that you can visit. It's a nice city for wandering, and but also for art lovers. It has the best art museum in Switzerland, and this museum can hold its own against some of the best museums in Europe. It really has a wonderful collection of art. It's known for a collection of art by Hans Holbein the Younger from 1519. He's got it from the 16th century. He's a well-known artist that is represented here. Also Paul Klee, who's a 20th century artist, this one from 1922. But when I go to the Basel Museum, I tend to really stand in front of this sculpture a bit. It's a very moving Rodin sculpture called the Burghers of Calais. Whole story behind it that I won't go into, but it's a very evocative 19th century sculpture that I particularly enjoy when I go to Basel. So well worth the trip. A little further south, you've got the city of Zurich, which you might associate mostly with banking, but it's actually worth a visit as well. It's right on the Limmat River here that flows into the Lake of Zurich. This is you're seeing you're seeing the cathedral of Zurich and some of the old city that's great for walking. If you want to do something a little more cultural, you can go over to the Swiss National Museum, which has a wonderful collection of objects and artworks that really represent Swiss history, various time periods in Swiss history. So you have this old section of the museum, which you can see was a castle at one time, and this more modern wing that's quite well done. And you'll see objects like these suits of armor from the Middle Ages on display, and lots of other interesting historic objects and pieces of art. If you keep going south a bit, we'll get to Lucerne, which is the city that's closest to our heartland area. And on the Reuss River that flows into the Lake of Lucerne, you'll have, again, lots of medieval streets and places to wander and shop. This wooden bridge that crosses the Reuss River is called the Chapel Bridge. And it's just a wonderful bridge to walk across and just really absorb. There are paintings all across the bridge. So you just feel like you can absorb Swiss history as you're walking across that bridge. And here's a better view of the bridge. That's really something that you need to do when you're in Lucerne. Some other things to see in Lucerne include the Lion Monument, which is a wonderful emotional sculpture that lots of visitors like to see from the Napoleonic era. I won't go into the story as to why the lion is weeping, but there's an interesting story behind it, and it's well worth visiting. And finally, those of you who like transportation and trains, there's a transportation museum in Lucerne that's lots of fun. Lots of old trains, but also buses and cars. And there's also just lots of technology exhibits that make it a fun museum for kids, and also for some of us older folks who just enjoy seeing lots of these interesting old objects and forms of transportation. Finally, we're going to go over and take a look at the Swiss capital, Bern, further over in the west, surrounded by the Aare River. It's on this peninsula here that, so it's a really extensive old city. You'll find the Swiss Parliament in Bern. You'll find Einstein's house if you want to go see where Einstein lived, right kind of here in the center of old Bern. But it's also just a phenomenal city for walking. This will give you just an example of some of the pedestrian areas in Bern. This is the old astronomical clock. These fountains that you'll see here in the foreground, there are fountains like this all over the city. Some call it a city of fountains. So you've got water flowing constantly out of these with flowers and brightly painted sculptures. It's a really fun city for strolling and shopping. But also, if you're an art lover, and you happen to like Paul Klee, the artist that I just briefly showed earlier in the presentation in Basel, there's a Paul Klee museum. This is fairly new. This was designed by Renzo Piano and has 40% of all the work that Paul Klee produced in his lifetime. So it's a really great collection. I haven't been here yet, but it's definitely on my list of places that I want to see next time I'm in Switzerland. So you can see it's not just landscapes and countryside. You've got some great cities to visit as well. But let's pull back and ask that second question, why Untours? Well, we've been doing this a long time. This is a picture from, we think, the late 1970s, somewhere between 75 and 79 probably. The guy in the middle is Hal Taussig, the founder of Untours, and my uncle. with some of his Untours guests in the town of Meyeringen. You'll note that people dressed a little differently for travel back in those days. But we've been doing this a long time, and that knowledge of Switzerland has been passed down, and we've been really, we're really proud of what we know about the country, both here in media and also in Switzerland. Our Swiss staff is excellent. So included in the Swiss Untour is an airport transfer. So this is Doris, who you saw earlier on Zoom, meeting a group of us at the Zurich airport in 2019. We're just about to walk down to get our train down to the villages that we're staying in. So you're met at the airport and taken down to your village by nice folks like Doris. Notice that we're dressed a little more casually these days than we were back in the 1970s. We also include an orientation. This is Tanya in Meyeringen, actually close to the spot that we saw Hal a few minutes ago, giving the outdoor portion of her orientation. So the day after you arrive, we give you and the other folks who've arrived in that group what we call an orientation. And that involves talking to you about what there is to do and see, how to use the public transportation system, anything that's going on, any special festivals or events that are going on. We do our best to help you get oriented so that you can really make the most of your week or 2 or 3 or 4 that you're spending in Switzerland. Tanya likes to do an outdoor portion of her orientation and also an indoor portion, but on a boat on Lake Brienz. So here we are as she talks a little bit about, about all these things I mentioned, what to do and see in Switzerland while we're on a boat cruising Lake Brienz. So it's a great way to learn a lot about Switzerland, but glance out the window to enjoy the natural beauty. And at the end of the orientation, people wander off at the next stop and get themselves home on their own, because by that time, people are familiar with how to get around and use the transportation system. So the orientation is an important part of our service as well. We also, just to really embed these lessons on getting around, we even offer an optional group trip that gives you a chance to take another trip on a different day that you might want to take anyway, but we're there to support you to make sure that you get the scheduling all right. This happens to be a trip to the small city of Thun. You'll see the castle of Thun right behind Urs. This guy here is our Oberland representative, and he was leading the trip this particular day. So this is another service that we offer. If you've been to Thun and you've been to Switzerland before, you can skip it, but you're welcome to come along if you like. So that's the optional trip. Now, how do you get around in Switzerland? We include what's called a Swiss pass. And the Swiss pass is a way that you can really have access to all modes of transportation in Switzerland. It gets you on to all of the trains, or most of the trains are free with this pass. There are some mountain trains that will charge a little bit extra, but you get a really steep discount off of their normal price. All the buses are included. All of the boats are included in this pass. So you've really got access to all of the transportation. And as an added bonus, you have admission to over 500 museums included with the Swiss pass. So it's not just transportation, but also museums. So it's a really great bargain and an important part of what we include in the Swiss Untour. And if you need some extra support after the orientation and after the optional trip, you have some additional questions or you need some help with something, we have a Swiss staff that's available by phone. So you can just give them a call and they will be happy to help you. Now, I cheated a little bit. You'll notice some non-Swiss people in this picture. Myself and Dee were actually in the media office, but this gives you an idea of who we have ready to help you in Switzerland. Here's another reason that we think it's important to consider Untours for your next trip to Switzerland. We have a foundation. Actually, they have us. The foundation is the owner of Untours. The Untours Foundation owns the Untours company. The foundation was started back in the 1990s by Hal Taussig, and since then has taken ownership of the company, which means all the profits from Untours flow through to the foundation to help them do the good work that they do in the world. The foundation works to alleviate poverty by providing low interest loans to entrepreneurs and businesses in the Philadelphia region, throughout the US, and throughout the world. So we think that's another really good reason to consider traveling with Untours. The profits are going to go to a really worthy cause. And of course, there's cows. We give you access to cows. I just couldn't help throwing this picture in because I love pictures of cows in Switzerland. But let's move on to the where question next, because that's one that a lot of people want to think about. So we have two main regions that we offer in Switzerland. One is we call the Heartland, which is this area here. The other one is the Overland, which is further to the west. In between these two regions is this area to the south here is the Jungfrau region. You'll see Lauterbrunnen. This is a famous region with mountains like the Eiger and towns like Lauterbrunnen and Grindelwald. And we get the question a lot, which region, Heartland or Overland, is closer to the Jungfrau region? And the answer is, they're both about the same. It's about an hour from Meyeringen, it's about an hour from Spieth. So it's about the same. It really just depends on the village that you stay in. But you'll have good access to the Jungfrau region, regardless of which region you choose. Frankly, when we're talking about the two regions, I'll just tell you up front, the Heartland is the region that we tend to recommend for people who are visiting Switzerland for the first time. It has a great combination of natural beauty, these villages along the lakes, and access to hiking, and it's very, very central for good public transportation to get all over Switzerland. Lots of good things to say about the Overland too, but we tend to lean a little bit more heavily toward Heartland, especially for folks who are coming to Switzerland for the first time. Let's just zoom in a little bit here to look at the Heartland more closely. So the Heartland is situated along a train line that goes from Lucerne in the north. We saw Lucerne earlier. That was the beautiful bridge and the Lion Monument, etc. Down through these villages to the town of Interlaken, right here. This is the Lake of Brienz. This is Interlaken. So this train line is really the backbone of what we call the Heartland. Now, our villages where we actually offer apartments start in Saxen. We have an apartment also in Lucerne, this little lake here. So Saxen's on a lake. You'll see the lake there. There's a tiny little lake here, or at least it's tiny on this particular map, and you can't quite see Lucerne marked here, but that's another place that we'll see in a minute. And then Meyeringen down here, and we also have some places on the Hasliberg, which is up above Meyeringen. So those are the villages of the Heartland, all of them connected by train, except for some of these villages on the Hasliberg, which we won't go too far into today. Let's take a look at some of these villages. So Saxen is the northernmost village that we looked at. Beautiful little town, lots of, several restaurants, several shops, and a great bakery, by the way, that I always enjoy going to when I'm in Saxen. It's also right on the lake that we saw from the map. This is the lake. You're not going to find any lake steamers on this lake, but it's a good one for swimming, for hiking. There's a really nice walking trail that goes from Saxen up to the town of Sarnen to the north. completely flat. I've even seen wheelchairs on that walk. It's really accessible, and you can see it's just a beautiful scenery all along the way. If we take the train up into the mountains to the south of us, we'll get to this town of Lucerne. And this is just a picture that I took from the train in the fall. You'll see the fall color as I was coming into Lucerne a couple of years ago. It's just a gorgeous town. There's a church here at the end. The village is more to the end, sort of at the left side of this picture, but you get a great idea of what the lake is like from this particular view. We have an apartment here that is quite popular among our Heartland apartments. It's called the Paradisli, the little paradise. This is the interior. You've got a nice view from the balcony of Lake Lucerne, the lake, flowers on the balcony. Always got those geraniums on the balcony. So it's a really nice place to stay if you decide you want to stay in one of these lakeside villages along that line. Let's take a look at Meyringen, which is further to the south. Meyringen is our most popular village in the Heartland. And there's probably two main reasons for that. One is that it's flat. You'll see that it's in a flat part of the river valley. That's the Aare River you see here in the distance. That's the same river that you saw in Bern, Switzerland. It flows through Meyringen as well. And so for folks who don't like walking up and down hills to get from their apartment to the train station, this is a great choice because it's mostly flat. It's also a good choice because transportation-wise, not only do you have the train line that we've been talking about that goes west to Interlaken and north to Lucerne, you also have some buses that travel up over some really scenic mountain passes that leave from Meyringen. So you've got it's a little bit of a transportation hub as well. And it also, part of that transportation hub includes a gondola that takes you up above the town. If you want to take a hike, you can take a gondola up above the town to a little town called Reutte, which is up above Meyringen. And we also have apartments up in this town. One of the reasons people stay up here is because of the views. You've got views not only of the valley below, but the mountains across the valley. This doesn't do justice at all to the views that you'll get from Reutte, but the hiking up here is phenomenal, and it's just really a beautiful place to stay. The Reutte is not connected to the train line except by bus. So there's a bus that leaves Reutte that connects to the train line. So it makes it a little less convenient for transportation, but great for folks who want to hike and enjoy the views. This is just an example of the kind of hiking you can do up here. It's not all difficult hiking at all. You can actually take lifts up to the hiking trails and hike very easily, even at grade with not a lot of climbing or descending if you want. You could take a lift up, hike across, take a lift down, and not even have to do much elevation change. So lots of good hiking options. And if you want to do more challenging hiking, there's plenty of that as well. So hiking up here is a wonderful thing to do. So let's take a look at the other region that we've been talking about. This is the Oberland here that we mentioned. Again, Lauterbrunnen is here, Grindelwald is here. This is right in between the Heartland over here, the Oberland over here. Jungfrau region is here, with Interlaken sort of between the two lakes, as the name would suggest. Let's take a closer look at our Oberland village of Spieth, which is right on Lake Thun. There's a castle on Lake Thun down at the base of the village. And if you look closely, you'll see patch of green here, which is vineyards. This is, believe it or not, a wine growing town. They grow a fantastic white wine. It's really one of my favorite white wines in the world. Very hard to find. But if you do happen to go to Spieth, see if you can get a bottle of white wine from the village. It's really worthwhile. It's a wonderful, crisp white wine. But Spieth is a really nice place to stay. Let me just back up though for a minute, because I want to explain something else about the Oberland. Some of the reasons that people stay in the Oberland as opposed to the Heartland are, you're about a half an hour from Bern. Some people want to be closer to Bern, which is north and west of Thun. It's also a little bit closer to the French-speaking part of Switzerland. So if you want to head over to Lausanne, Geneva, those kinds of places, the Oberland is slightly closer to the Western French-speaking parts of Switzerland. Those are some of the reasons, but sometimes it's really just, I've been to the Heartland a few times, I want to see something different. So that's why I'm going to the Oberland. So Spieth is a wonderful village. We also have a village on the northern shore of Lake Thun. So there's an apartment there, an apartment in Spieth. We have some apartments in Frutigen. And we also have apartments all the way down here in a village called Kandersteg that's not marked on this particular map, but we'll take a closer look at Kandersteg in a minute. So let's go to see the an apartment in Spieth. So in Spieth, we saw that Spieth is right on Lake Thun. This is an apartment called the Blumli that is in the town of Spieth that actually has a lake view from inside the apartment, from the living room. So here you go. You got your lake view from the apartment. Beautiful place to stay. I highly recommend it. And it's well situated for walking to the train and shops and all of that. So the Blumli apartment, take note of that. It's a really good place to consider staying. I threw this in because it shows you one of the sites on Lake Thun that's on the northern shore of Lake Thun, across from Spieth. Spieth is on the southern shore. Oberhofen is on the north shore. And this is a castle that you can really see best from the water. You don't see it very well from the road that goes by it, but if you take a boat ride, you get this great view of the Oberhofen Castle, which is one of my favorite things to see on the lake. So let's pull up again and take another look at the map to see about where Frutigen and Kandersteg are located. So Spieth was up north of here. Frutigen is the next village down, and we have some places here in Frutigen. And then Kandersteg is the town that I mentioned earlier that wasn't marked on that first map, but here it is on this other map. By the way, this little lake, if you remember that picture we saw earlier of the hiker with the dog, this is the lake that the dog was standing over. Beautiful hike that you can take from Kandersteg. So let's take a quick look at Frutigen, which is a town, fairly small village, couple of restaurants, couple of shops, not a lot going on in terms of those sorts of amenities, but it's a beautiful place to stay. And as you could see, it's got quick proximity to Spieth and Thun, but it's deep in the mountains as well. Kandersteg is further south, and it's a little larger than Frutigen. It has more restaurants, more shops, a little bit of a resorty feel, but it's a hiking resort kind of place. So the folks that come here are mostly about eating good food and taking amazing hikes. So it's roughly equivalent to the Hasliberg in the Heartland, in that it really attracts folks who are more interested in hiking than they are necessarily in getting everywhere really, really quickly by public transportation. But it's a beautiful place to stay. So one more time, I'm just going to hover over the Lauterbrunn and Grindelwald area south of Interlaken. This is the train that comes down here goes to Lauterbrunnen or off to Grindelwald. And just to show you what I'm talking about here, this is the Lauterbrunnen Valley, which reminds me a lot of the Yosemite Valley as a former Californian. And it's just waterfalls are just gushing throughout this entire valley. Grindelwald, also a beautiful place to stay, not necessarily to stay, but a beautiful place to visit. Lots of great hikes and lots for photographers to see in and around Grindelwald. So that brings us to the end of today's presentation. Because you sat through this this presentation, we're going to give you a $50 per person discount for anyone who remembers Swiss cow when you book your Untour for your Swiss Untour for this year or next year. Put that Swiss cow in the notes or mention it over the phone, and we'll gladly give you a $50 per person discount. We are taking bookings for this year starting on August 4th, and we are taking bookings for next year starting in May. So we'd love to see you in Switzerland. So now I'm going to close this, and oh, I want to just remind you, here's my little Swiss cow. Swiss cow, that's what you get. Remember that code when you book your next Swiss Untour. So it's time for questions, and I'm going to just look in the chat here, and let's see, what's the first one here? I have somebody asking, sending me a private message about Ticino. Do we have a presence in the canton of Ticino? We did, but we don't anymore. I'm sorry to say. You can get to Ticino, this Italian-speaking part of Switzerland, from the heartland or the Oberland, but we don't have anything there anymore. Let's see, a question about Geneva. Doris, could you answer that question?
I'm just looking up on the SBB time schedule. I can tell you exactly how long it takes.
Flying in, is Zurich the best, or what about Bern?
Doris is looking it up right now. It's a long trip, I can tell you that. From the heartland, getting to Geneva is very long.
If you stay in Meyringen to Geneva, it's exactly 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours.
Not too bad. You can do it as a day trip.
Type on here, I don't do it.
It's a beautiful ride. What is the difference in climate between May and August? Let's ask Doris to answer that one as well.
You know, it's a bit unpredictable in Switzerland. It could be great if you book 2 weeks in May. It could be a little rainy, but the same thing could happen to you in August. I would say it's both nice. In May, you have the alpine flowers blooming, the alpine spring flowers, which are really, really nice. In August, the lakes are warmer if you like to take a swim in Lake Thun or Brienz or Lake Lucerne. Maybe a little bit less other tourists in May because it's before season. Our main season would be our kids are off school 5 weeks in July and first week of August. So also a lot of Swiss people traveling within Switzerland and more international tourists in August, I would say.
Okay, so we need a eurozone COVID passport? I'll take a stab at that one, and the answer, I believe, is no. Does that sound right to you, Doris and Dee? I think it's really just Switzerland has some specific entry requirements, but I don't believe that there's any kind of passport, special COVID passport that's needed for travel to Switzerland.
Yeah, you would have to find out what you would need from the States.
Yeah,
I've not heard of anything like that. I mean, I know of the testing that has to be done, but a
Wait.
separate sort of passport.
Dee or Catherine, could one of you share the link from our web page about with detailed information on travel to Switzerland? We actually have that on our website now.
Yes, I will look it up and
Maybe you could share that link. That would be helpful.
I will.
Where would I stay if I wanted to visit Zermatt? I have an idea for that one. Doris, you might have the same idea. What do you think?
I would, yeah, in Kandersteg, I would stay.
Okay. I was surprised. That's as the crow flies. That's actually
Or
the
Frutigen,
closest. Well, you know, I just looked it up yesterday because I was wondering the same thing. Spieth is closer in time to Zermatt than Kandersteg or Frutigen because of that new tunnel.
That's true. You're right. It doesn't stop in Frutigen. Yeah.
It goes right. So it's about from Spieth, it's about an hour and 38 minutes. Well, it's exactly an hour and 38 minutes to Zermatt from Spieth, whereas it's 2 hours plus from Kandersteg, but it's a much more beautiful ride from Kandersteg because you're not going through a tunnel the whole time.
That's true. I also thought about the beautiful Lucerne, which is easily accessible from Kandersteg. That's already on the south part of the Jungfrau region Alps.
Those are some beautiful regions. Yeah. South of Kandersteg, it's worth not going through that tunnel all the time, but really taking the trip over the mountains there. Okay, where do you get the COVID test before you return to the US? Doris and I were talking about this ahead of time. She said, what do I say if they ask, where do I get the COVID test? The answer is, it's changing all the time. By the time you get there, we'll have the answer for you. But right now, it's still changing, and they're starting to set up places to get COVID tests for travelers. So we don't have a definitive answer quite yet, but it will be possible to get it, and it'll be convenient for you. Better to fly into Bern or Zurich? Definitely Zurich. Are COVID tests needed 72 hours prior to arrival or departure? Are they recommending masks? I'm going to let that link answer the questions about the COVID tests, but I'd like Doris to talk about masks in Switzerland.
Right now, you need to wear a mask on public transportation, in trains, buses, on the boat if you're inside the boat. Outside, you don't need the mask. And you need a mask if you go grocery shopping in all the grocery shops, bakeries, cheese stores. But luckily, they stopped the kids, they don't have to wear a mask in school since yesterday or since Monday. So it's basically stores and public transportation.
Okay, what are the best Christmas markets in Switzerland? I have no idea. Doris, what do you recommend?
The only one I've heard of is Basel. They have a big and decent Christmas market, a nice one. And there's many small ones in Brienz, even in Interlaken. But I think comparable to the markets in the Alsace in Germany, France, maybe Basel.
Now, are you talking, Doris, about the Christmas markets in the winter, or are you talking about a store that sells Christmas?
I'm talking about the winter Christmas market.
Right. Do you have any, I'm not quite sure which Charles was referring to, but there sometimes are Christmas shops where you can, at least in Germany there are. I don't know if it's a thing in Switzerland where you can buy Christmas.
I have seen that in the United States, but never really in Switzerland.
Okay. And unfortunately, we don't offer a Swiss Untour in the winter, but it sounds like Basel is the best market to visit in the winter if you do come. Why is Spieth not on your Oberland website? Are you going to list apartments? Well, it should be on the Oberland website. I can,
There's one apartment listed. It's the Bloomley, and it is
Yeah.
on the Oberland page.
yeah, it should be there.
The very bottom, if you scroll to the very bottom, it's the last listing. It's called the Bloomley.
Okay. All right, well, we flew through those questions. Any other questions, folks? Okay, well, I hope that the website that we posted there, hopefully everybody can see the entry requirements website there. We've been trying to keep that updated with our best information in terms of entry requirements and return requirements, all of that, and we'll keep updating those as we go. So on our homepage, if you click on the COVID button, you'll get access to every country, including Switzerland. Will you be having overviews for other locations in Europe? Well, it depends on what you want. We are going to send you a survey a little bit after this, and if people liked this and found it helpful, we might do it again. So just thumbs up or thumbs down. If you thought it was a waste of time, tell us that. If you think it was helpful, tell us that too, and we will follow your lead. Majority rules in this case. Looks like we've got already a vote for Paris and London. So we'll take that into account. Let us know, and we'd be happy to put more of these together. It's a new thing for us. This is the first time. So hopefully, south of France, boy, we already got people voting. Great. All right, well, if there are no more questions, I think we might be able to just finish up. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And you know how to reach us. Let us know if you have more questions. And we will be posting this on YouTube. So if you'd like to watch it again or share it with a friend, we'll send you a link once we've actually uploaded it to YouTube. So keep that in mind. And don't forget Swiss cow. That's what you want to remember. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Doris.
Thank you, Doris. Thanks
Thank
for joining us,
you.
Doris. Bye-bye. Well, I guess you'll get to bed on time tonight, Doris.
Thank you.
Thanks for.
Hope to see you in Switzerland.
Yeah, me too. Hope to see you soon. All right.
Bye-bye,
Good night.
everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Gute Nacht.
Gute Nacht.